There was an old saying that came out of World War II, and probably out of wars before that. There are no atheists in foxholes. I strongly believe that. I went over there with a philosophy that the Lord was going to look after me. I had a job to do, and I was going to do it. I talked with other veterans after I got home, and the ones that had an anchor that they could hang their hats to, even the ones that came home wounded, fared a lot better than the ones that came home that did not have an anchor, namely Jesus Christ. I can remember times driving down the highway. I drove after I had a little incident with a Southern Baptist chaplain who said I couldn't drink and couldn't smoke, and I said, "Excuse me, sir." The squadron commander reassigned me as a driver of a supply truck, forward rearm for the Cobra gunships. It was the truck and Charlie, i.e. the Viet Cong. Now, fortunately, I had a radio in the truck, and our unit protected our supply trucks. We always had a helicopter flying one terrain feature over the hill. And all we had to do is say, "We have contact," and we had all the helicopters we needed. But I was in a couple firefights that were close. When you only have 4 guys, 2 tractor-trailer trucks, which is 2 drivers and 2 shotgun riders, and a whole mess of Viet Cong, it's not always a sure thing. But I had faith that in the Lord that I'd come through it. I also had faith in my brother GIs that the helicopters would be there. And they were. The guiding hand of the Lord said, "Put your head down, you keep driving." Your shotgun ran the machine gun, and the helicopters came in and let loose with their rockets. And Charlie decided he didn't want to argue with those helicopters. He wasn't worried about the 2 trucks. He was more concerned about those helicopters. Because when one left, another one came in. But the faith that your support was going to be there was also the same faith you had in the Lord, that He was going to provide that support, and allowed me to do the job that I was assigned to do. I can remember another time I was operating a forward rearm point at Polycline Airstrip. Just for some of you who, well, where's Polycline? It was never in the news. It was about 30 miles north of the city of Pleiku, about 3 miles off the Cambodian border. We could see the Ho Chi Minh Trail from the strip. Well, the Viet Cong decided to try to dislodge us from that hilltop, because the artillery people at the one end of the airstrip could sit there and lob shells into the movement down there all night long and make it rather difficult. Well, they hit us one night, and there's 3 of us living out on the airstrip, nothing but ourselves. We didn't bother posting the guard. What would we be able to do? Nothing. Yeah, after dark, we had an infantry platoon move in into prearranged positions with us. But they were more there for moral support. They weren't able to do anything more to protect the ammunition and the fuel than it was to protect us. But again, faith in the Lord that we would get through it.
Well, first, it's important to know that I had a strong faith to begin with. My father was in the military, and him and my mother were really strong Southern Baptists, very committed to God. And so I grew up with that foundation. So I thought I was pretty good at going into the military. As time went on, though, I began to realize how little my faith was in comparison to what it could be, because I started to see what the rest of the world was all about in the military. Some of the strongest things, that affected me was just my experiences around the world, seeing other people, folks that have less than nothing, and yet they still have a Christian foundation or a faith that God will see them through hour by hour or day by day in comparison to the way we look at things in, our lifetime. Just meeting all those different people, seeing all those different folks around the world, made a huge impact on how important a role God plays in everybody's lives and the miracle of day-to-day living. So that was probably a big door opener for me. I think that one of the key things that really enhanced my faith was getting to understand about soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, the veterans that can go from the most incredibly fearful moment in time where they're fighting literally for their life, and in an instant they turn into the most extreme humanitarians that you could ever meet. That you'll go through the battle, you do what you have to do, and almost instantly everything turns off, and you're helping people, you're comforting people, you're sharing that last moment of a dying person, you're carrying a child to safety, all kinds of different things that I've seen people do in those horrific conditions. But one of the big ones that sticks with me is in one of those, what I consider a miracle, is when I was in Iraq, I was sent on a mission to take some medical doctors and some support stuff forward of the friendly lines, and stage them forward in order for us to have a attack on the Medina Iraqi forces up there. And I was pulled out of my command and put in charge of this little detachment to take them forward, and I had to get them there by morning. Unfortunately, the trucks and things that they gave us weren't really made for traveling across the sand, and we weren't on a road. We weren't allowed to go on a road. There wasn't any road out there. And it took us a good 12 hours or so to reach our objective, which was about only 25 or 30 miles away. But we were driving without any lights in total a blackout drive, and all I was told is, don't go south of this road, stay north of there. Well, through that night, we had, I was scared anyway because I didn't know where we were going. We did have the infancy of the technology of GPS, but it didn't really work because what it relied on was signals from towers, and we had bombed all those towers ahead of time. So when we got up there, we didn't have anything. So I fell back on my land navigation skills that I skated through in boot camp some 15 years ago, and I'm out there with a compass, and the map isn't even really a good map, and trying to figure out where we're going. We got stuck over and over. I was really worried I couldn't leave anybody behind because there was no friendlies around. And we stopped at this one point to get our bearings. And just as we were getting ready to start, a guy from outside jumps up, an American soldier jumps up, pounds on the front of the truck and says, "Don't move." Well, I didn't really know who it was at first. We were kind of scared, but he was an American guy. There was a unit that was passing through there, and they had stopped, and I didn't see them. We didn't know they were there, so we were kind of crossing. And there was a unexploded bomb about 6 inches in front of the wheel of my vehicle. And if we would have rolled forward, we would have ran over it. And it was just by miracle that he was there and stopped us from doing that and guided us around. And then we went off, and I never saw another person. He was the only guy we ever saw. So he saved my life that night. God put him there. There's no question about that. So we moved on through the night, and as we're going along, I became more and more anxious because I really didn't know where we were at, didn't know where we were going. And there's no landmarks or anything. It's just as flat as this floor for hundreds of miles. And just as the bombing starts up on the hill, that's our objective. I kind of knew we were in the general area because we were on the right side of the bombing. And I looked, and I saw a little shimmer of light down below, and that was our point that we had to go to. Somehow, God had directed me to get these people to this point through the night when I had no faith in myself to be able to do that. At some point in the night, I said several times, I said a prayer and said, "God, just guide us to where we need to go. Don't let me lose anybody out here." And it happened that way. So to me, that was a miracle. And then miracle upon miracle upon miracle, we get there, and a few hours later, they start bringing down the captured soldiers from where we're attacking. And they were in such bad shape from all the bombing. I mean, you could not imagine the horror that they must have experienced underneath the bombardment and everything. Because it was shaking me, 5 miles, 6 miles away. And all of these American soldiers jumped in and showed the compassion for taking care of the enemy, giving them water, giving them aid, taking care of them. Even though we had to hold them as prisoners of war, they were being coddled like children. And that's just the way the soldiers, nobody told them to do that. That's just the way the soldiers were treating them. All my life, I've always been kind of taught from Sunday school up that we should always live our lives like Jesus tried to live our life. And we all know that we can never achieve that. But that doesn't keep us from trying. And when I look at soldiers around the world, that's what I see. Is I see people trying to live like Jesus. I mean, Jesus sacrificed his life for our salvation. And all of these young men and women coming up on this Memorial Day sacrificed their lives for our country, and by connection with that, our freedom to worship God the way we see fit. And I believe that they are walking in Jesus's footsteps when they do that. A lot of them don't even realize that they're doing it, but they are committed to the nation, and they're committed to the brotherhood of humanity. And I think that if we sit back and just watch, you can see that sacrifice from either just missing important events in your family, missing your children, or leaving your wife to take care of everything while you're gone, and missing missing the things that we want to do. We actually give up some of our rights voluntarily so that we get the privilege to serve. I told you I wanted to bring this up, that this weekend coming up is Memorial Day, and we tend to think of that or look at that in our quest to appreciate what veterans do for us. and we turned that into another Veterans Day almost. And we appreciate that. All the veterans appreciate that. But what that day is really about are those people, the men and women who have walked, I guess, walked the road of Christ farther than any of the rest of us. And it's really about recognizing what they gave for us so that we can continue to have that holiday with our families, so that we can have parades, or so that we can enjoy our time together and worship in church together. So I think in the long run, my faith has grown exponentially through those experiences.